Hello and welcome to the Now Spinning Magazine podcast with me, Phil Aston. And on this episode, I'm delighted to have with me Andy Edwards, drummer extraordinaire, who's played with Robert Plant, Bed Bevan, IQ, Frost as well. We've just got a new album back, but Million Town, where it started, Andy's on that. But the reason why I've invited Andy to join me today is that he's been part of the music business for when this great transitional period of streaming started. And I'm very interested in talking to you, Andy, about how you feel the music business has changed for musicians now. We're not talking about the legacy acts who managed to be there at the early 70s and made a fair wad of money, but the ones who are still just trying to earn enough money to buy that jar of coffee and the ever increasing price of olive oil. So welcome, Andy. Thank you for joining me.
Thanks for asking me, Phil. It's lovely to be here.
You mentioned in a recent video, and I thought this would be a good entry point. You were talking about the fact that it was like a spoof. You were talking about being sponsored by Greggs for their sausage rolls and their jam donuts. And you were saying, Greggs they just don't know who I am over here doing this YouTube channel. But I think the problem is, Andy, is you can't stream a sausage roll. You have to go. You have to go and physically buy one. And I think if you could download a sausage roll, they'd be on the door. They'd be at the door saying, "Any chance, Andy, you could mention our sausage rolls on your channel?"
Well, I think you've actually stumbled into the very fundamental point that I'm going to be coming across on this video, trying to put across, is the fact that yes, you cannot download a sausage roll. That's the whole point. You have to buy a sausage roll because it's an actual thing. And the music industry used to be based upon the fact that you would sell actual things. They were called records, the round things that we used to buy.
Yeah.
And we all know that nobody buys records anymore. And there's all streaming and it's all this and that and that. But actually, they're still selling sausage rolls in Greggs. And so I think that's the key, is that you have to sell product. You have to understand that you've got to make your money somehow, and selling product is where it's at. Now, you can buy stuff online, but I think that the idea that you're going to sell a song, it would be like trying to sell a photograph. And musicians moan about Spotify. They're lucky to be getting 0.0001 pence on that, because you could quite happily go on and just download a photograph that's, photographers a long time ago realized that they couldn't sell photographs anymore. And so they've had to find other ways of making their living. And in a way, they were there before us, because photography's had to move with the times. The source of the money comes from somewhere else for them now. But as that's been taken away, this huge thing has emerged, which is the internet. And so photographers that are still working are utilizing the internet. So that's your starting point. Musicians have to utilize the internet, and they have to put that first. And this is the big problem for musicians. They don't want to put anything first. They want to put what they think how it should be done, which is the way it was done like 40 years ago. They want to put that first. And so when you mention the internet to them, they go, yeah, I suppose I should be online doing that, as though that the internet will feed people into them being a musician. But it doesn't work like that. Your product is online. Greggs will have a website, and you can order your sausage roll online and have it delivered to your door if you want.
True. And you've got no other way of getting that sausage roll unless you actually physically buy it.
Yeah.
I mean, there are as obviously my audience, readers and viewers, there are people that buy physical music, but I think the issue is that it's niche now. I mean, if you look back at clippings, or if I buy a box set, you'll have like a photograph. I think there was a Black Sabbath one recently, and it was a picture of the single. It said the first 50,000 copies come in the picture sleeve. You wouldn't even get 2,000 copies pressed worldwide now. So it shows how different is the volume of it. And I've spoke to quite a few musicians on this channel when I said, and they said, we've got a coloured vinyl version coming out. And there was a guy from Stray, Del Brumham. Yeah. And I said, how many are there? He says, 150. They're all signed. But 150 copies, that's like it's like going to the little old lady down the road and doing a bit of gardening for her and putting an invoice in, isn't it? That isn't not sustainable as a way of earning.
It is sustainable. But the thing is that it's not sustainable if you think that the way you're going to make a living is by selling records. And so the whole mindset that musicians get wrong is they think they need to, I want to be a musician. I'm going to do this. I'm going to write some songs. I'm going to record them. And then I'm going to put a record out. Oh, it's rubbish. Nobody buys records anymore. Because they're putting the old way of doing it first, right? So if we just take records, for example, I've got a friend, I won't mention his name, but we went to see Black Sabbath in 2000 when they were doing supposedly their last ever gig, which they did with Ozzy Osbourne. And at the end, they let off a whole ton of, what's it called? Confetti. The big confetti explosions went off. And my friend, when everyone else was leaving, he was filling his pockets with this confetti. And then he went and bought some lovely little containers. And he put 5 pieces of confetti into these little containers, went onto eBay and started selling them off for £10. Black Sabbath confetti from the last ever gig. And he made a lot of money because he understood the product. He put the product first and he went out and sold the product. Right. So, and the thing that was great for him is he owned all of that. He was just taking the full profit. So yes, in the old days, you used to sell thousands of records. In the old days, I was on a few records. I think Milliontown probably sold 20,000, something like that. I've never made any money out of that album in any shape or form ever. Right. But I make money out of selling albums now. It's the most I've ever made, and the reason is because I put the albums out myself and I own them. So when you sell one, you're getting 100% of the profit on that, and it's not going to a record label. So yes, you could say the numbers are lower, but the profit is bigger.
Yeah, because you have got. So yeah, that's the way. I guess musicians going back to when I was growing up, the 70s, you became, I mean, maybe it was not the right thing to say, but a lot of people wanted to become a musician, to become a rock and roll star. So they wanted to be able to drive a Rolls Royce into a swimming pool and not have to, and get the money. But obviously it's very, very different now, because that kind of money is not around. Those kind of advances aren't available from record labels. In fact, record labels want you to already have a following before they even come and say hello to you. And of course, just coming off stage and thinking that's me done, and going back to the hotel is not even an option now, because a musician has got to get behind the merch stall, meet and greet, do the social media, and be around and be accessible, and be also probably a content creator.
Well, the thing is that the way musicians look at it, I think, is that the musicians have to make a fundamental change mentally, which I think is what you want me to talk about on this, is what can the musicians do?
Yeah.
So we look back at, say, the 1970s with rose-tinted spectacles, but the truth was this. If you had a band, there was no way you could record, because a recording studio cost like £1 million. And if you went in there, you had to have a ton of money just to be in there. Then you needed a producer and an engineer. And because nobody went in recording studios, no normal person knew how they worked. So you were completely at the beck and call of the producer. So the only way you could get your record out was to go to the record company. And of course, they monopolized this because they'd got their studios, or they got their producers. And they could sign you, and then they could pay their producers, and they could take a profit off a record that wasn't actually going to make any money for them, because they were getting the profit from this deal and taking off that. And so if you sold a certain amount, they could get their money back. The producer got paid off, and the band's going, well, with our money? Oh no, well, we're still ploughing through that advance that we owe you. So if you were in the tiny, tiny, tiny minority that signed a deal, and then the even tinier minority where they actually were marketed and promoted correctly and had all the right contacts to break you in America and all those things, if you're in that little tiny bracket, so you actually sold some records, then you're hoping that your record label wasn't diddling you, and you're hoping that there wasn't some weird advance that made everyone else richer, that you're ploughing your way through. I have met a whole ton of people in very, very famous bands. It's only a certain percentage that made any money, even out of bands that were huge. So
Yeah.
it's a tiny amount when we look back at that people could earn their living by being in a band and selling records. And some of the sums of money that I've been told that big bands were paid by the label when they had that advance, where they're trying to get by on 18,000 a year.
Yeah.
The equivalent of 18,000 dollars a year to try and live on that for 2 years to then have the label drop you, even though you had hit records, and turn around and go, yeah, well, you did make $1 million, but we have spent $1 million on you. Well, where did it go? Oh, my mate who makes videos for MTV, that video shot, that cost 150,000. And it's things like I've been told that, I won't say the band, but a really, really big band. They're good, major label deal. They arrive in America, and they get picked up from the airport, chauffeur driven off to their first gig, and they're going, "Oh my God, this is brilliant! Can you believe what we're doing?" And the chauffeur went, he turns around and goes, "I'd believe what you're doing because you're paying for this."
Yeah,
the label has a deal with the chauffeur company. You see, and this is the thing. It was rubbish. If you're a musician now, we're in the best time ever for a musician. It's the best time ever.
I suppose the biggest difference is that in a way that going back then, the labels were the gatekeepers. So that for a music fan, you had a better chance of knowing what was coming out, who'd been signed, who was going on tour, who was the support act, because there was less of it.
Yeah, there was less of it.
But now there's no gatekeepers. So anyone.
No gatekeepers, yeah.
So to get discovered is down to the musician. It's down to their prowess on the internet and using social media to say, look at me, I'm here and I'm doing something that I think you might like.
Well, you said the word discovered. And discovered seems to suggest that people have this innate talent that will be discovered, like the fairy godmother coming and finding Cinderella, she's beautiful, but she just needs a wand waved round her.
Yeah.
And she will suddenly become the princess. And that is the idea that the record industry sold us. I call it the Cinderella theory. It's what the music industry sold us. Mm-hmm. And if I don't know if you remember, well, you will do, New Faces in the 70s.
Yeah.
That title was basically, there's this bloke strumming his guitar and he's in his scruffy clothes, and then suddenly they come along and pop, and then he's famous. It doesn't work like that. It's just not like that. The, talent isn't innate, for example. You have to work at it. Nobody knows, you could be a good singer, but where's your good songs come from, and where's your image come from, and the photos? It just doesn't work like that. Musicians, I think, first of all, have to stop seeing this as a negative situation. And the reason it's difficult for them is because what they want to have the old-fashioned rock and roll sort of lifestyle. I'm not on about sex and drugs and rock. They want to be able to make albums, go out on tour, and do all that type of stuff. But that is not the product anymore. That was successful in the old days because that's how they made the money. They made the money out of those things. So, people say, oh, well, you can make your money out of gigs. No, in the old days, they didn't make money out of gigs. They only went on tour to sell an album.
That's correct. Yep. Very true. Yeah.
And so the only way you can make money out of gigs now is by hiking the tickets up to a price, which just makes it pointless. When we were kids, you'd see that Santana were playing, at the local whatever it was, and you go down to your local record shop and you get £7.50 ticket and you go with your mates and watch a gig.
Yeah.
And now it's just, families, rich people, and they're only there to see some legacy act that they've spent 150 quid, who is no good anymore, but they can photograph that person and go, I hate to say, but I'm here watching Bob Dylan, which is what's happening right now here in the UK. He's doing a tour here. It's the old way. You've got to forget about it. And records, I actually think, are good things because you can sell them. You can make money out of records. You can make money out of T-shirts. You can make money out of key rings. You can make money out of everything. And that's partly the way you are going to make money. And you're also going to be able to make money by selling products online. That's another avenue of it. But if you're a musician, you have to swap making the record as your main product. It's a psychological thing. The musicians are directed towards, their whole focus is on making the record. Your whole focus, and it's a much better thing, should be creating a monetized community.
Yeah, because the other thing about the classic days of the music business is that many musicians were kind of like these mythical beings that lived on a mountain way out of reach of the fans. There were not only others of the gatekeeper of the record label, there was a gatekeeper of the fan club and the management, and you had to write your letter into Sound's newspaper, and they might be passed on to the label, and somebody might come back to you and say, yes, he likes that. Whereas now, you've got to literally be able to talk directly to your fans.
I don't know. I don't know if that's true. I mean, well, shall we see if we email Mr. Beast? No, we won't get to him.
That's yeah.
He'll be sitting in his huge, castle. Yeah. In whichever country he owns, because the amount of money he's making. The only reason why we can talk to these musicians now is because they're not very successful anymore, and they've become touchable. I don't think you can talk to Madonna. And so I don't think that is right. I think that what a musician needs to do is not get worried about that, not get worried about thinking, because what they'll say to me when I start going down this route, and that's why I'm trying to put it out in this sort of certain way, so you get it in a certain way. They went, well, I didn't learn my guitar to become a content creator. I don't make videos. I'm not a TV presenter. I'm not this. I'm not that. I'm a musician and I want to do this, blah, blah, blah. Well, my answer to that is, in the old days, if you learned to play the guitar, you had to become a pop star. So all the ugly people, they're out. Ugly people are out. Do you know what I mean? Uncool people are out.
Yeah.
It was the same deal back then, except back then you had to become a pop star, which is basically a film star that plays music.
Yeah.
You had to be David Bowie, and if you weren't, then you could do session work. But to do session work, you had to be a virtuoso musician, So that was that sewn up. So the deal is now, what you need to do is, rather than thinking about the content, you look at yourself as a musician, you say, well, what do I do? Okay. And from there, you put the foremost in what you do every day in trying to create a monetized community. Right. So, for example, the obvious place would be either Bandcamp or Patreon. That's where you can monetize a community. Now, Patreon is very straightforward, because basically you set your Patreon up and you create a tier. You could have a number of tiers, but let's just keep it simple. You create one tier. So when somebody joins your Patreon, they sign up to you and they pay you £5 or $5 every month, right? Mm-hmm. Now, they've signed up to you not to buy the content. That's an optional and extra. They've signed up to you because they want to support you. And so you have to communicate to the audience as you do whatever you are doing, as you travel around doing what you're doing. You need to say to them, I will be bringing an album out. I will get tickets. But rather than buying the album and the tickets, you're going to get that for free. Just pay me every month and you will get the album and the tickets and a whole bunch of other things as well. Right? That's communicating to the audience. Right? So they will go, I'm supporting you. Now, I've done a couple of bands recently, and it's been very frustrating, because as soon as I set the band up, I said, forget the album, forget the record deal. That's not where it's at. It's where Patreon's at.
Yeah. And
so we've set a Patreon up, and then the other guys in the band who don't really understand it, they're all focused on getting gigs. We need to get gigs. We need to make an album. But we've pulled in a few patrons, but there's no content in there. I've stuck a first few things to get it off the ground. And I've said to the rest of the musicians, I said, if you're writing something, just film it and stick it up. Or if you've had some thoughts, write it down. And I'll get onto this, is all the different ways of creating content which will be comfortable for a musician to do.
Yeah.
And they haven't done it. And with both bands, what's happened about a year later, someone said, what happened with that Patreon? Oh, I don't know. Should we have a look at it? So we've logged in. And those 15 people that we managed to get into that Patreon are still in there and still paying their £5, and there's £1,000 in there. And then the band is still going, oh, God, we made 80 quid on CD sales this year. You know, that gig we did, we got paid $1,000 for that, you know, but obviously it cost us $1.50 to get there. But I think we've just about cut into profit. Well, what about the 1,000 quid in Patreon? Oh, yeah. And I'm like, oh, can't you see that there's this thing here that is just generating money for you and you're ignoring it because you want to make an album, because you want to go on tour, because you want to be doing all that stuff first. Now, if you get your Patreon to a point where you've got 500 or 1,000 people in there, when you book your gig or you make your album, it will just sell. So all the bands I'm in, we're straight into profit on the first day of release because the patrons have bought into it, they're supporting you, and they're waiting for the album to come out.
So it's kind of like an alternative crowdfunder, isn't it? Because it
exactly, and the thing about progressive rock that we all love is the genius of this were Marillion, and they invented it. And the reason is because they went, what have we got? Have we got a record deal? Not really anymore. Do we how much profit do we get on the records? Oh, I don't know. I mean, if you look at the splits with a record deal, what you get, it's pathetic. You know, you've really got to sell a lot. And they didn't have anything except their audience. And what Marillion did was monetize their audience. And the audience were happy to do it. And this brings in another thing. If you've got an audience, that audience will have people in it that are dirt poor, but they love your band. And they're valuable to you because they will help you get your band off the ground, but they got no money. So they don't pay for anything. And the rich ones pay more. And so the other thing you have to realize is once you monetize your community, you should not be selling stuff for a set price unless there's a cost. And I believe if you said, well, I know I've proved this to myself, and I was told this, and I never thought it would work. But say if you're making a physical album, if you put that album up for the amount which way you will just cut even, so there's no profit in it. And then with the release of the album, say, look, if you want to pay some more, you're happy to. But you don't have to. You could have it at this dirt cheap price. But if you want to pay more, you'll be supporting us, and there'll be a chance of a second album. When your millionaire fan comes along, they feel so guilty in that situation, as they should, that they will buy your album for 50 quid. These are the secrets that no one seems to get. You have to have a Patreon. And the thing is, if you've got a Patreon, you've got your community in there, what you have is people who really like what you're doing. So the funnel's like this. You do your music, and you do anything that you think you can get out in front of people and say, why don't you want to join my Patreon? That could be anything. That could be stuff online. It could be stuff in the real world. At that point, you go, well, we don't need to have a fee for gigs because gigs are just a way for us to get people on our Patreon, not sell our CD. We need to get them on the Patreon. They'll get the CD for free.
Do you think this is still a thing for musicians to think that the idea of giving away their music, because they've got Patreon, but they're
making more money. Yeah, they are making more money.
But it is kind of very, I think for some musicians, letting go of the idea of selling.
No, in the old days, they make a CD, they pay for it out of their own money, they get like 500 pressed, and then they send 100 out to people who they think will market for them, and none of them can. No. And they play it on their, the little community radio station, and 14 people who already knew the band already hear it, right? And so nobody sends those CDs and go, oh my God, now we've sent those CDs, we've just sold 1,000 copies. It never happens, right? And so this is what I'm saying. That old thing where you give yourself stuff away, they're happy to, but when it's the new way of doing it, and most people that have got some money in their pocket will pay you, and when they pay you, rather than going, oh, I've got to buy that and part with the cash, they will feel like, I really like this artist, and so I'm supporting them. Now, with Patreon, the thing that I realized with my Patreon is I have paid members and free members.
Yeah,
and the free members get content. And if in a perfect world, and this is the thing I'm really scared to do, is to actually go, all the content's for free. And if you want to support me, just, support me by going on the tier and paying me, £5 a month. But what I've got at the moment is I split it a little bit. But if you go and join as a free member, what I try and do is there's enough content to be equal to all the other patrons who are paid members. So there's a ton of content coming up.
But because again, I think that's one of those things where some musicians will struggle with that. The idea, if you've got people at a certain tier within Patreon, they're paying £3 or £5 a month, but you're also giving that they've signed up to, and they get that as part of the tier they're in. But people who are free also get the same thing.
They don't get the same thing. They get what they get on mine. What I said is that I've been thinking maybe, because it's down to my patrons. Because once they're there, you're talking to them. They can message you, and the best thing I ever did. And if any of my patrons are watching this, the thing that they will say is the best thing I ever did was to create the Patreon WhatsApp group. Now, the only way to get into that is by paying me some money, and that. I see them talking. I know them. They're lovely people. I love them so much. They support me so well. But in that little Patreon group, you've got musicians and you've got people who love music. So a lot of musicians have only come in so they can share their music into this Patreon group, which has 200 people in.
Wow.
And the other day, I was posting something in, and one of my patrons put a video up. It was like a comment. I put it on one of my actual videos that I put out on the channel, because he went, "Isn't there some way Andy can't we make him knock before he comes into the Patreon chat? You know, because we're getting on with something, and the only time he ever comes in is to ask us for more money." And he goes, we pay him in the £5 every month. Isn't that enough? You know, and it was so funny because I have a sense of humour on my channel. My patrons have like that sense of humour, so they got the same sense of humour, and it's a joy. It's a joy to go in there, Originally, I was going, I'm doing this and I'm doing it. Now I just leave them to it. So that's an example of content where they're really getting something based around you. What you're doing, basically, what YouTube does is your audience is bound by the fact that they like you. And because they like you, there'll be other things that they like that will sort of join them together. So that's a brilliant club for them to be in. It exists because of you. So content, all right? When I first set up Patreon, I thought that because I got a YouTube channel and I got content on there, so if I did a top 10 progressive rock drummers, I then had to do another video like that to put it into the page. And that's what I started doing. It was killing me. And I still do that sometimes. And then I realized that that's not what content is. So, for example, once a week, I stopped doing this now because I'm so busy, it's killing me. But once a week, we used to have a Zoom meeting like this.
Yeah.
So you put the link into Patreon. The only people who can see the link are the people who paid. And then on Friday, they all come in. And when I started off, I was bringing in guests to come and chat to them. Yeah. And we actually had Bevan came in and did a chat to the student, the patrons. Yeah. See how I see them, really, is it? And then we just started chatting, and sometimes it would just get together and have a chat. So that's another easy way of creating content, because once the Zoom chats happen, I then put the Zoom chat in for the free members to see. And so we will talk about like what's the greatest band, or we'd have a chat about this, because there's a lot of musicians in there. I've got Martin Miller, who's a guitarist based in Europe, who's got I think he's got 750,000 followers on YouTube, and he's really, really well known. And he's a patron. So I've had situations where we're chatting about something, and I can see Martin's in the Zoom, and I say, "Martin, come on in." And then I've managed to have Martin in my chat talking to my lot. You know, it's so you start to realize, rather than just thinking you got to replicate content, I've started to realize that content is absolutely anything. So say I'm trying to work on a YouTube video. So I'm going to work on what am I working on at the moment? 10 tracks I hate by bands I love. So rather than sketch it out privately, like I used to, I'll just open up Patreon into my sketch pad. And I go, "Hi, patrons, I'm thinking of doing this. I'm thinking of doing that. These are my ideas. This is this." And sometimes if I'm driving, I've put a little thing in my car so I could just put my phone on and it's on me. And as I'm driving, I just hit record and I talk to the patrons. All my patron videos are made in the car, so I can do it while I'm driving.
So you film those little clips and then you upload it directly to
Yeah,
Patreon.
and I'll go, and it's not like a YouTube video, because a YouTube video has to hit a whole bunch of things and it has to sell the idea to that audience and draw them in. But my patrons are a captive audience, so it would literally be like, "Hello, patrons! I'm going to go and just going up the shop to get some crisps, might get some biscuits as well." But I just had an idea, and if you could help me, I'm trying to think what's the worst tracks, by my favourite artists. I mean, do you know that "It's All Right" by Black Sabbath? You know the one that's on Technical XT, the one on Billboard. So that's bloody awful. I mean, why do they do that for? It's got to. Is there any other? I mean, Sabbath are brilliant, but they do some. And I will chat like that for about 15 minutes and bang it up. Now I could do that every single day, and half of those will be paid, and half of them will be free. So that's an idea of how to create content. But if you don't like talking to camera, you could write it down. When I discovered just writing stuff down, creating text, sort like having it as like a blog, or sometimes I'll just go into my phone, collect all the photographs that I've taken doing gigs and stuff. Nothing I put online, and I just put all the photos in and go, "This is us playing at so and so. It was a funny story," and I'll just write it down. There is a multitude of content. And the thing with Patreon now, which is brilliant, is when you put content onto Patreon, you can now also put it for sale to the general public. This hasn't caught on yet. So if you've done something really good and it's just for your paid patrons, you can actually say it's also up for £3. So free members, I mean, the public can buy these as well. But you say free members, if you want to just watch that one, it's £3. And so this is incredible. It's incredible.
But you can't because you're talking about Patreon, but another thing that we need to mention, because it's like the elephant in the room, is YouTube. Because it's not, you need video, don't you? You need to build a community, to build trust. You've got to be seen. You've got to build, it's easier to build a relationship or a community when people can actually see you and interact with you.
Yeah, so the big problem in music online is that it's not words and it's not pictures. If you're scanning through Instagram or Facebook, as you've noticed, you scan through, you see things and you read things, but you don't listen to something, you have to click on it.
Yeah.
And so memes have become very popular because memes are images with words.
Yeah.
Poetry has become more popular because of the internet. So you have to sell by a picture first. It doesn't necessarily need to be a video. So I've got a trio called Law of Three, and we booked a gig in Worcester, and the guy spent £1,000 promoting this, and we still hadn't sold any tickets. It was like literally no tickets sold. So I came up with a campaign of, I took a photograph of the band, and then I photoshopped us into all stupid situations. And I did it every single day, because this is one thing about the internet. You have to go bang, 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 bang. Yeah. Not annoy them, but you've got to keep hitting them every single day like this, right? And on the third go, they go, "Oh, Andy's put one of these silly photos up of his band again for that gig he's doing in Worcester. Oh, now they're in King Kong's hand. Oh, that's quite funny. Yeah, yeah." And then, "Oh, they're Del and Rodney now in the Trotacon." I'll just Photoshop this stuff in, and I just put it in it with the date of the gig. And we sold 50 tickets.
Wow.
50 tickets. That was like £500.
So was this on your Facebook page, or was
that
this
was on Facebook and Instagram? So the all I use is YouTube, Facebook, and Instagram. By far the most powerful is my YouTube, because that's 1 million views a month, or just under 1 million views a month. I've got 42,000 subscribers, and it's incredibly powerful. That's incredibly powerful.
Just because obviously as a YouTube person, and this might be different for musicians, one of the things about the internet is that negativity really sells, doesn't it? Clickbait. I mean, there are some YouTubers out there that really, this is their key driver, and that's how you get subscribers. If you have something that says 10 bands I don't like very much, but in better language, it's going to do better than album of the week.
Yes, totally.
But for musicians, they can't really. It's a lot more difficult for them to come up with titles that won't cause some sort of backlash against what they're trying to do.
No. So this is an interesting one. And it's a difficult one. This is a more difficult point, I think. I've been a musician. I went professional in I started making money in 1989. And then I went pro in 1993, and I've done everything. But the whole of my life, I've made money out of music. It was teaching music, working in colleges, making dance records, everything, covers band, weddings, proper record labels, playing with massive artists. I've done everything. Yeah. And I'm quite proud I've done over 30 years making money. I hit this face on, and the thing I had to do is go, Andy, it's all gone. You have to really admit it. And it wasn't just the music industry, the teaching is going as well. And the music education and the courses are going as well. And when I faced that, I thought I'd just be a music teacher up to my retirement. But when I saw what was going on, it was horrendous. And I didn't cope with it well. And I got to a point of utter desperation. But in that utter desperation, I started to look, and I suddenly realized that YouTube can make you a ton of money. Facebook can't. Bandcamp can't, although it can make you some more money. Instagram can't. TikTok can't. The only one that can make you a mass of money is YouTube. The Mr. Beasts in this world are multi-millionaires. Mr. Beast is probably pulling in about $20 million a month.
Wow.
That's the sort of figures we're talking. And so I made a very strange thing of going, I reckon I could do YouTube. I think my personality, I would be able to do it pretty good. And I that's what I've tried to do. Some people just can't do that. And when I start to have success, everyone starts to say, how do you do it, Andy? And I start to advise them, and they go, all right. And they go away and make their video. Mm-hmm. And then when I watched it, I was like, oh, this is rubbish. And they just don't have the personality.
Yeah.
And one of the things is that I hope that when I come out and do the negative ones, I class those as comedy videos. And so if anyone criticizes me, I go, look, it's not true. I like Marillion. If I got a choice between listening to Marillion and Sam Smith, I'm going to listen to Marillion. I like Marillion. I've got a running joke that I don't like Marillion, in the same way Morecambe and Wise had a running joke that they didn't like Des O'Connor. It's exactly the same thing. It's humorous, and I'm really taking the mickey out of myself in being like that. I'm a middle-aged man. I've got like these silly prejudices, and I developed that. So I hope I can say outrageous things on there and act an utter fool, because Andy's doing a comedy video today, and I've been working on it for about a week. I'm about to do a video on Bill Evans, the jazz pianist.
Oh yeah.
That will be serious.
Yeah,
it really will be. My skill as a musician and a music history, knowing about music, all the skills I've got will be put in. I'll be doing something really good there. When I'm doing the comedy videos, I actually don't say things I know, because I actually want to come across like an idiot. Because it's entertainment. The way I see it is, if I'm cracking a joke about Al Di Meola, I've cornered the market in Al Di Meola humor. And if you're a music fan and you like something to have a laugh, no one in the mainstream is going to crack jokes about Al Di Meola.
That's very true, actually.
You see, and so, and this is where it comes down to, is that I can get a lot of views for me. The mainstream media can't do that, and that's the other thing with YouTube. You've got to provide something the mainstream media can't do. And so, with my audience, and I really studied YouTube, so the structure of my videos are maximized to make money. They're maximum. I don't mean like having tons of adverts. I do an hour. My video's an hour long.
Yeah.
I have created them so people will watch them for a long time. Now, the reason they watch them for a long time is because I do stupid stuff at the end of the videos. You see? Now, when I do that Bill Evans video, I know it won't make the views, but my proper audience of serious music fans, they will watch that and they will get what they want out of it. And so I realized to be able to do this, I had to do a lot of videos. And this is I started doing 3 videos a week. And the reason why my YouTube channel got off is because I was unrelenting. It was 3 videos a week. Didn't matter if I was ill, did I dying, I was going to do. I'm now on 7 videos a week, plus probably another 4 on Patreon. It's just killing me. And that's why, I hadn't eaten. I've got up this morning trying to create this video or that video. And it is a really tough thing. So YouTubing is a certain thing. Now, how does this work with the musicians? Well, what I want to have on my YouTube, and I assume you would want this as well, is forget the record labels, forget the radio, forget the venues. The first point of call for breaking a band should be me. And if you so the people who are YouTubers, it's like and this is what made me realize this. When the Rain album came out, I contacted Pete Pardo at Sea of Tranquility. Now, many, many years ago, when I went and played at Nearfest, I think I met Pete.
Yeah.
And he just had the magazine back then. And so I was in IQ, so I was up here and Pete was down here.
Yeah, yeah.
And then when I found out he was online and I went to look at his YouTube, and then you go, Pete, can I have an interview? He goes, well, yes, I'm really busy. And suddenly I realized it had gone like this, that Pete has got power. If you get your album on there, right, it's going to sell. And we did an interview for Rain and it sold the album. But also my YouTube, which was not in existence then, had a bump. And so I thought, well, let's have a go. So I did the Rank the Mavish Yorkshire albums very badly. It was the first video I ever did. And I forgot about it because I wasn't looking at YouTube. I go back, about 3 months later and it had done 7,000 views. I was like, what has happened here? I normally only do about 150 views. What's happened? So I did another one and Pete asked me on again. And I saw, oh my God, Pete, he's like a distributor. But the thing is, this isn't organised yet. The music industry hasn't moved with it. The labels should have this, but they haven't got it.
I mean, that is a really good point, because that has happened to me a few times now, where a record label has told me about something, and it's been a limited edition. It was something Madfish brought out just last Christmas, and I mentioned it. I did a feature on it, and it sold out within 24 hours, and so that was a kind of a penny dropping moment for me when I thought, well, there's some influence here.
So the point is, at the moment, this isn't been coordinated at all. Nobody realizes that's where it is.
Yeah.
I am inundated by our bands that want to have me review their album or cover them on me. I mean, literally, and I just don't even answer them because I've just got too many and I feel rotten. So my rule is if I've got a direct relationship with them. So if someone joined my Patreon and started chatting and I was looking and they said, can I help you? And if I got something back from them, I'm not necessarily monetary, but if they actually come into my world and support me, I will support them back. If someone just sends me a CD, and it's not because I'm mean, I really wish that I could review their album and get a ton of views, but I would kill my channel. I would kill the channel if I did that. Yeah,
I've just said in my monthly update that I'm not going to be doing as many reviews for some things because it just those videos die.
They die.
Yeah.
And so what I've done is I've taken on a new big studio, which I've got a recording studio built in. I've got lights. I've got a full PA. And last night I did a gig. This is the first time I've actually used my new studio. So I contacted Jim Mullen. Now, Jim Mullen is the guitarist within Morrissey Mullen, one of the big jazz funk bands in the 1980s. Before then, he was with Brian Auger's Oblivion Express. I'm a big fan. Brilliant. Yeah, and so Jim's a legend, right?
Yeah.
And we booked it. I paid for it. I brought some musicians in. They came down to my studio. We had about 15 people come in. They paid tickets, which funded for Jim to get down. But there was only 15 people. It did not matter. It was a lovely gig. They enjoyed it. And then after we performed, I interviewed Jim, and I'm now going to collect that all into one big video and put it out. Now, we recorded it, and I said to Jim, if this comes out, can I put it out as an album? So there might be even an album, like a digital album coming out of the back of this. There'll be all sorts of different products. And I really hope my audience look, because Jim was incredible. He was incredible, really incredible. I mean, it put me off when he started playing. I mean, he's 80 years old. My God, the guy can play. And you go, this is why the guy's a legend. God, he can play. And I'm hoping to get Jim some profile. I'm hoping that people buy some records. And I hope I can help him and get people talking about it. Now, so I said, when I did an interview with the Frost guys, and I said to them, you know, that they're going to go and book a gig in London. They'll promote it. They might get like 300 or 400 people in for that Frostbite. But I said, if you drive up to my place, the PA's already in, all the instruments are in, you just walk in, set up, we'll interview and play. I said, it does not have to be perfect. It doesn't have to be all polished and sound like the album. We might just play cover versions. But the point is that will generate for you content from me, which is actually good content, and it will get you on the map. So I bumped into Alice Coley, who is one of my old students, and she's a folk artist, and she's going around gigging. She's just put a band together. And I said to her, I said, look, come down. I said, learn a couple of Joni Mitchell songs, because she loves Joni Mitchell. I said, we'll have a chat about Joni Mitchell. You play a couple of Joni Mitchell songs. You play a couple of original songs. That will set her up. If she gets a Patreon set up and we go in and we film that, now she's got her video, she's got her photographs sorted out. I can provide this to musicians, but the reason why I'm doing this interview with you and the reason why I've been putting these videos out is because they just don't get it.
Because the other thing, I think you've touched on something else is, and I think you mentioned this in one of your recent videos, is that playing live, you might have, as you said on Patreon, you might have 100, 200 really uber fans that really absolutely are passionate and do everything for you, but they'll probably spread all over the world. And so if you play a gig down 20 miles away from where you live, none of those people are going to go, and there'll just be, as you said, 20 guys at the bar talking, and it's a bit disheartening. But as you say, if you record that digitally, that concert, not only can you share it to all of your Uber fans who'll lap it up, but they will then share it amongst people they think will be interested in what you've done, and it's also recorded and can be used again. So nothing.
This is completely correct, and it's like. So, for example, if someone is doing a lot of gigs, they're doing a lot of pub gigs, the iPhones are so good. I mean, we recorded this gig last night properly, multi-track recorded it. And then when we look at the iPhone footage, we're going, God, the iPhone footage is nearly as good as what we've got on there. So if your Patreon could just be, you just film the whole gig and then you drop it in Patreon, and then you film the whole gig and you drop it in Patreon. And that would work for some people, especially people who say improvise a bit or they chat or there's funny bits in there, you know. And this is another point that's really important. Every artist is individual. You can't copy anybody. So what I've set up with my studio is this idea that I would love in the future to benefit from great artists, whether they're known or unknown, visiting me rather than doing a gig. So they rock up at my studio, they walk in, there's a PA already in there, the drummer can use one of my kits if they want, the amps are all in there, it's all mic'd up, so they just sit down and play, and we chat and we play, and I put it out there. If it's an established artist, that could easily do 30, 40, 50,000 views. Now, where else can an artist at that level, sort of weird prog artist, turn up and play to 50,000 people and not have to worry about, you know, bringing their gear down or anything?
Yeah.
And the unknown artists, they need, because when you sign a deal, when you approach A&R, there's always this discussion that goes on where they go, oh, your manager will go, I've got this band here. And they'll go, so what are they like? Oh, they're not like anything. This band's really special, totally, you know, really special. Then you listen to them, oh, it sounds like Pink Floyd. So it's one of the things I think is very useful is if you can work out where your audience resides, doesn't mean you sound like the band, but if a Pink Floyd audience would like what you do, then you need to ally yourself with that in some way, because that brings a bigger audience in. And so what you want is a YouTuber like me being contentious, you not being contentious. See, the artist can't do what I do. I'm the person doing this. Is the point. We need to become the distributors of this. And I think what would be better is you and me are probably much more moral in how we want to help the artists than a record label could ever be. I really genuinely want to keep the music alive. I you know, if I criticize a band, I mean, I've been Camel's become my latest criticism. Oh, they're so boring. They're like, they're a prog band, but they got nothing, and all this type of stuff. Well, after doing that for a while, I've just done a reevaluation of Snow Goose.
It's a good album, Andy. It's a good
I
album.
listened to it when I listened to it when I was 14 and I was into Iron Maiden. I didn't like it.
Well, that makes sense, yeah.
And I carried that prejudice all the way through, and I've explained why I got the prejudice. And now I've listened to it, and I have done a really in-depth study of it, which really goes into the story of the Snow Goose and all this type of thing. That journey, that's YouTube. That is YouTube. You follow somebody, they change their mind, they have different opinions, they get this, they discover that. Yesterday I did a video where it was like a music education video, and I did a test. And in that test, I got one of the answers wrong. So anybody watching it will never get a 10 out of 10. And the people spotted it, and they said it in the comments. They went, Andy's got that wrong. And they were all having a go at me. And then some bloke goes, I think this is just one of Andy's evil plots to get some chat going on his comments. And when it happened, my mate, he went, you've got this wrong. I said, don't worry about it. I said, that conversation in the comments is bloody brilliant. That's what I want, and I'm not perfect. I never said I was perfect. So I get things wrong. If it was the old days and I was writing a book, that would have been checked. But YouTube isn't that. So you don't want to be perfect on YouTube.
But I think that's also very important for musicians, because musicians, a lot of them, they want it to be perfect, don't they?
And that's why I brought this up. This is why they can't do this. Right? Because a thing has happened in music that if you signed in 1967 to a record label, the reason you got signed is because you sounded amazing.
Yeah.
And then you walked into the studio and they mic'd you all up, and despite all the bleed and the fact that you can only play the track once, you played and you sounded amazing. And then the multi-tracks came in, and then the sequencing came in, and sampling, and then the being able to digitally edit, and then auto-tune. And now nobody's actually got any talent anymore. And because everything is produced to perfection, every musician involved in this thinks that they've got to play like that. And they know deep down they can't play like that. Right. So they're anxious about that. So they will then go to their local studio, record in that studio some audio that's not going to do them any good anyway, because nobody can do anything with audio. And they will pay a ton of money for someone to make them sound better than they are. Now, I had this experience with Frost because my drumming on Million Town has been very, very heavily edited. And like I said to you before we got online, I did an interview with Jem, but he'd gone to watch my channel, and he got me saying, well, I was really let down because my drumming was so edited. And he raised this in the interview, as you would. And I thought, well, I'm telling the truth. It was. All modern records are like that. Everything is just made perfect. When I did my YouTube, when I started to go wrong, and what happened was, I was doing a video on Genesis, and I forgot Tony Banks's name. So I'm here, I'm a YouTuber, and before that, I had never done this before. So I'm doing my video. I get to that point, and I go, of course, keyboard is Genesis. Oh, what the hell's his name? And I just searched around, and I chatted, and I searched around, and I couldn't remember his name. And all I could think of was Peter Banks. I was going, Peter Banks? No, that's the guitarist in Yes, isn't it? Peter Banks in Yes. Well, who's the guy in Genesis? And then I'm going, you lot you're gonna lose complete faith in me now, aren't you? You lot. You come here to me, and you got my judgment on what's good progression. I didn't even know the keyboard. I do know him. I just can't remember it. And when I came to edit it, I didn't have enough time to edit it, so I put that up. And the video just went nuts. It was at the end of the video, everyone got excited, and I suddenly thought, oh my God, the audience does not want perfection. The audience wants their band sounding like they do. And if they're getting a feeling from it, they will put up for it with a few mistakes. Your album's going to be perfect. You still do that, but online it shouldn't be perfect.
I mean, I think what you've just said there is really interesting. I don't mind sharing this with everyone who's watching this either. The amount of videos that I've done because I don't script mine, I just go straight into it. But the amount of times I've been doing it, and it's a band I know really well, and I've been coming up to a bit I want to talk about, and all of a sudden the name of the album or the person,
Yeah, it happens all
it's
the
just
time.
gone. It's just
Yeah.
it's gone. It's just not there, and I'm trying to talk around it, expecting
Yeah.
it to, and it doesn't come. But I have then either stopped it, started all over
Yeah.
again, or edited it, and really I should have just thought, let it out.
Because the thing is that what you want is your audience to come and see you talk, right?
Yeah.
And one of the things with me is everyone goes, "You'll do an edit, you do an hour video, you don't edit it, so you really are pulling this out of your memory." And I don't research either, so I have got an insight. I'm sure you have as well.
Yeah.
We have encyclopedic memories on this. People come to see that, but they want to see it.
Yeah,
Because when you edit it, because when I started to look on YouTube, I thought some bloke sat in front of his record collection reading out what it says on Wikipedia is not a YouTube video. And
totally
once you
agree.
get to that
Totally
point,
agree. Yeah,
you've got to you've got to give them something, and all these idiosyncrasies are really great. Now we're men of a certain age. You do, don't you? You forget.
Yeah, you do.
You forget.
Because
it's like you go, oh,
yeah.
I mean, I have it happen all the time. I leave all the mistakes in now. I just leave them all in. The main reason for me was because I was making so many videos, I didn't have a chance to edit. So it was like, that's going to have to go up like that. That's going to have to go up like that. I mean, I tell you what made me realize this. I was in my studios used to be in my garage. So I'm sat in the way talking, and I look to the side, and right next to me on the wall is the biggest spider I've ever seen in my life. And I don't like spiders very much. So I like this, hit stop, got the spider out as best as I could. Yeah. And then as I hit record, I thought, why did I do that? People are getting 1 million views for big spider video. Why did I not go, and then look, I can't believe this. And anyone watching this will go, well, this is quite entertaining. I didn't expect it to go there. I had a ghost once in it. There was a ghost. You know, what's going on? So this is what people like to watch. I mean, it's like this now. We're chatting. We haven't got a plan.
Yeah, that's very true.
No. Yeah. I didn't think I'd be talking about spiders and ghosts and all this sort of stuff.
Very true. No, very true. So as we come up to the top of the hour, we talked about YouTube for musicians and obviously being yourself, and literally just completely being yourself so you can build community and obviously Patreon. And then things like Instagram and Facebook are like the satellite platforms to basically pull people in. I mean, do you also look at things like on YouTube? It does have its own kind of mini Patreon with YouTube members, doesn't it?
Yes, and that wasn't there when I said. So I went to Patreon, and I probably, if I hadn't gone to Patreon, it would have gone with that. And I can't tell you much about that. And the other one is Bandcamp. Obviously, Bandcamp is way better than Spotify for niche artists. You know, there is nothing wrong with Spotify, and that's I could do a whole video on why I think we shouldn't be bashing Spotify. It's pointless. But Bandcamp is great because rather than paying Spotify so you get all the music in the world, they support you. You have followers. They can chat to you. You can have listening parties. All that's great. And when they buy your album, that means they can stream it forever. So they can stream it, say, 3 times, and then if you don't buy it, you can't stream it anymore. And when you buy it, you can download it and stream it. You can sell physical products through Bandcamp, and you can sell tickets. So I've now started putting on events simply because I realized that Bandcamp, you could sell tickets, and it's really great. But behind that, and I haven't done this, is also a subscription service. And I think that artists really, if they're pure music artists and they're not like me and willing to be an idiot on YouTube, that would be another thing to look at, is to try and build up a subscription, because people, if you've got your audience paying in every month, that is way better than them buying an album. When the album comes out, you're going to have to send it in the post to them for nothing, but they will have paid you, 62 quid that year.
True. Yeah.
So why would you not do that? And the fundamental thing is stop thinking about all the old products. Your product is your Patreon. That comes first. Don't need an album. You don't need any live gigs. Patreon, you can do gigs in Patreon.
Very true. Very, very true.
You can do everything you want to do. You can do in Patreon. So you start to go, how do I create a Patreon and drive people to it. I haven't spoken about this. There is a funnel, but you need to interact with the real world, make contact with them. If you're just starting and you're doing a gig and there's 5 people in there, you go out and chat to them. And if you can't chat to them, you get someone who can and say, oh yeah, and if they really liked it, yeah, well, sign up for Patreon. It doesn't cost anything. Just become a free member. You've got them then. You haven't got to give them your Instagram. You haven't got to do anything else. Just get them to sign up to Patreon, free member. So everything's there. And then when they get there, they can then look at your Facebook. They're free members and they're paid members. And then the paid members, obviously, at that point, when you've got 1,000 in there, you could say, where would be a good place to do a gig? You can negotiate that. Find the venue that's in between your audience.
Yeah.
And then put it there. And then you do one gig. And you film it and you record it. You do that one gig. Once that gig is done, you don't do any more gigs because you can't. You'll make money out of that gig. And you're hoping that in 5 years' time, you'll be able to do that worldwide. But you can't get there by magically doing the superstitious things that you think will make you discovered by the fairy godmother of rock. It's never going to happen. You're going to have to slowly build an audience up. And this is so important to realize that. And when you start, there's much more satisfaction to having 25 people who really love what you're doing. You're friends with them now because they're supporting you. And when you put some product out, those 25 will engage with it deeply. And of course, this all comes down fundamentally. If your stuff is rubbish, none of this will happen.
That's very true. And finally, my last question, well, kind of observation really, is that it is still easier for musicians to say, this is my CD, my album, will you buy it, please, than will you sign up to my Patreon? I think people feel weird about asking for people to become patrons, but I think they've got to make it's got to become part of the relationship building, hasn't it? You've got to see Patreon.
Every time I log into my emails, it says so-and-so has now become a paid member. The free members become paid members because they're not stupid. It's like the big, the problem with a CD, right? A CD is rubbish. It's like it's not good enough to pay 10 quid for. It's not good enough to pay £5 for. It's just not. Well, it's not enough there.
It's like you. It's so black and white, isn't it? I mean, I'm a huge fan of them, but I can listen to it for free. Yeah, and so there aren't many products where I can get it for free and then have a choice of paying for it, but it's not paying for it as well. It's weird, isn't it? So we go back to the start of this interview, the sausage roll. I can't download a sausage roll, so I've got no choice but to buy one if I want one. But with music, I can listen to it for free.
When I brought an album out last year, and I never did this because I didn't have the cheekiness to do it, but one of my patrons, he took the album and he made a mini disc version of it, a cassette version of it, and he made a 8-track version of it, all looking like that. And he sent them, posted them to, he did one for himself and he posted them to me. And I thought, why don't I sell these for 250 quid each? Because there's one copy
in the world.
And I because at that point I started to realize product's product. And so you can sell CDs. And I think what's going to happen is it's definitely the case for vinyl. I'm buying so mumuch vinyl. I don't listen to any. I've just set my turntable, but I didn't buy it to listen to. I bought it because I love vinyl. Yeah. Right, and that's why people buy vinyl.
That's true.
I'm starting to feel like that about cassette tapes now, because it's cool. It's like you're buying a product. You don't need to buy it to listen to it. You're buying it to have that product. And I think CDs are going to go like this because what I'm starting to notice, things are slipping through the net and they're not on CD.
Yes,
and I'm actually thinking, shall I set a label up? And so like Morrissey Mullen. The stuff's not on CD, and it's brilliant. So could I release it on CD?
Yeah, just license it for a while. Yeah,
license it. I could probably. How much it costs to do the way I do it with my bands is the first run is not a Glassmasters CD. It's just 100 run. Costs about 200 quid. We can always get through those 100 CDs quite quick. And at the end of that, we've got gross around about 1,000 quid. We spend that money on the Glassmaster, then that one goes out. And this model has really worked. So we are selling product. We are selling product, but you have to work and you have to know how to do it. And for people who don't know how to do it, I'm hoping in the future there will be some sort of structure where rather than signing up to a label, they're signing up to a new type of label that does this for you, because the record labels don't do this for you.
No, they don't. No, they don't.
You know,
very, very true.
It's
yeah.
So yeah, there's so much to talk about. I know we've hit the hour now, but
thanks so much, Andy, for all of your time today. It's been really, really interesting, and hopefully it will be very useful for a lot of people who watch this. And where's the best place for people to find you? YouTube,
without doubt, YouTube. Just search Andy Edwards and you'll find me. And could you, just to show you this in action, you've recorded this. Could you send me a copy? It won't go public. I will put it up on my patrons for my patrons to see. Is that okay?
Absolutely fine.
Andy. And even though you'll think, oh well, I'll lose the views, you won't, because my patrons might not know you and they might not know your channel. But if they watch that on mine and go, that was actually quite good, they might hook up to your channel. And it's those interactions that we have to work on. Those little interactions are worth more than a gig or a CD, sat in your garage that,
No, I'll definitely do that. I'll send it through to you.
Brilliant. Lovely. Thanks.
Well, take care, Andy, and I'll talk to you soon.
And if you ever want me on again, just come, because this has been a really interesting conversation. So I hope I was of some use to some musicians.
Very, very much so. It's been absolutely fantastic. Talk to you soon. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye, everybody.
Bye. A huge thank you to my guest, Andy Edwards, for being with me today for this very important podcast, looking at the music business as it was, as it is, and how it's going to be, and the importance of things like Patreon, the subscription model, not just about products, CDs and vinyl, as much as we love that here at Now Spinning Magazine. I also, as you know from doing Music Biggest Chat and all the interviews I do with musicians and all the bands that I champion, that I want them to keep going, to keep creating this wonderful art form. I'm not against streaming. I use it for discovery, but I use it for convenience as well, which is how a lot of people use it. But for musicians, it's more than just that. And for gigging as well. As Andy says, the internet has given everyone access, literally leveled it out. So we might think that things aren't as good as they were. But as Andy points out, in the 70s, you couldn't use the recording studio unless you had the money to do it and the advance from the record label, which is all recoupable, which it still is. The difference now, of course, is you can actually do it yourself. You might say there aren't as many gatekeepers, but again, the real stuff will rise to the top. But it is, again, it's how you support those bands. And personally, being involved in a musician's story, being involved in part of the creative process makes you feel more connected, makes you feel very motivated. And I myself don't like trudging across town to park my car in an area of town which seems a bit dodgy to go and see a gig where most people in there don't seem to be interested. I think online concerts and stuff like that and generating content to share, to get discovered is wonderful. Look at what I do here for Now Spinning Magazine. I've got a good chunk of subscribers now, and across all platforms and everything that I'm involved in. But everyone is spread all around the world. So if I decided to do a meet and greet somewhere, most people probably wouldn't even be able to come along. So I think the world is changing for music, but it is possible to earn a living at it. It is possible to really make a go at it. These are exciting times to be a musician, and there is exciting times to be a fan as well. We have to look forwards. We have to look at the opportunities. And that's exactly what I intend to do, and also use the influence that I'm growing as well here to help where I can as well. But again, thank you to Andy Edwards for his time today, and check out Andy Edwards on YouTube. His YouTube channel is loads of fun. He's a very knowledgeable guy and a very talented guy as well. So thank you again. Remember to check out the Now Spinning Magazine website at nowspinning.co.uk. You can buy merch from everything from T-shirts to mugs and all sorts of things. Check out the podcast. We've got loads of good interviews coming up. And of course, subscribe to the YouTube channel. And you can also become a patron And whereas a patron, you can come to the twice monthly virtual meetups and also get access to the Facebook group where you can talk to fellow collectors. Thank you so much for being here. Remember, music is the healer and the doctor. Please take care, keep spinning those discs, and I'll see you all very, very soon.